When people think of Portuguese football, they think of Benfica, Porto, and sometimes Sporting. The big three are regulars in the knockout stages of European competitions, which is why they live rent-free in the minds of casual fans worldwide. But every other club, they're practically invisible to the international eye. Even in Portugal, there's no real consensus on who the true fourth biggest club really is. So I decided to make this video and give you what I believe is the most objective, fair breakdown of the 10 greatest Portuguese clubs outside the big three. And just so we're clear, this list is based on titles won, European appearances, league performances, consistency, and overall impact on Portuguese football. So, without further ado, let's kick things off with number 10, União Leiria. One of the best teams to ever come out of central Portugal from a region that doesn't even exist, Leiria has even made it to a European final. Well, it was the Intertoto Cup. But more importantly, they were a launching pad for legends like Derlei, Oblak, Nuno Valente, and of course, the greatest Portuguese manager of all time, José Mourinho. They've been away from the spotlight for over a decade now, but from the 90s to the late 2000s, they were seriously competitive, even fighting for the top 3 when Mourinho was in charge. Number 9, Nacional. One of the most followed Portuguese clubs on social media, even though that's mostly because they were Ronaldo's second team, Nacional built a strong legacy with consistent Premier League appearances over the last 25 years. During that time, they were often one of the strongest clubs outside the big three, even finishing top 5 4 times. Their performances earned them a Europa League group stage spot where they even knocked out Zenit and faced off against some big European names. And we cannot forget that stadium. Choupana is one of the most infamous yet legendary battlefields in Portugal, with a fog so thick that games get postponed, winds that turn corners into chaos. It's truly a true fortress. And besides that, Nacional also has a pretty strong record against the Giants. I mean, they once smashed Porto 4-0 in the Dragão Stadium. Number 8, Pacos de Ferreira. Another team that only really started rubbing shoulders with the elite in the 90s. Compared to others on this list, Pacos are a newer presence, but they absolutely earned their spot here. They finished third in the league, qualified for the Champions League playoffs, and made it to the Europa League group stage. In terms of legacy, they might be one of the lightest names here, but you simply can't overlook that third place finish in 2013. Number 7, Académica. Known as a Briosa, Académica is one of the most historic clubs in Portugal. Despite their early identity as a team made up entirely of university students, they were one of the most consistent sides in the 1950s and 60s, even going toe-to-toe with Benfica during its prime. They won the very first Taça de Portugal in 1939, and they stunned everyone again in 2012, winning it as massive underdogs against Sporting no less. But ever since Portuguese football turned professional, Académica has struggled. Today, they're going through the worst period in their history, playing the third division, far from the spotlight they once knew. Number 6, Maritimo. For decades, Maritimo was the definition of consistency. From the mid-80s until the end of the 2010s, the Lions of Madeira built a solid reputation, competing fiercely against the big three and holding their own against European giants like Juventus, Valencia, and Rangers. Their finest hour came in 2012-13 when they qualified for the Europa League group stage for the first time. And even though they've never won a major trophy, their nearly 40 consecutive seasons in the top flight speak louder than any single cup. That consistency alone places them above every team we've mentioned so far. Number 5, Vitoria Football Club. This is the saddest name on the list. At their peak, during the 1960s and 70s, Vitoria weren't just one of the best teams in Portugal. They were one of the strongest in all of Europe. They stood toe-to-toe with major European sides and had one of the best records in Portuguese knockout competitions, appearing in 13 finals in total. They won 3 Taças de Portugal and were also the first ever winners of the League Cup. Estádio do Bonfim was once home to legends like Fernando Tomé, Chiellini and Jacinto João. But today, the club is bankrupt and playing the district leagues of Setubal, a fallen giant in every sense. Number 4, Vitoria de Guimaraes. Choosing between the two Vitórias wasn't easy, both have history. Both have weight, but even though Guimaraes doesn't have as many trophies, their consistency is what sets them apart. Aside from a brief hiccup in 2006, Vitoria Guimaraes has been competing near the top end of the table since the 1960s. That's a level of sustained dominance that no other club on this list can match. Trophy-wise, they've won the Taça de Portugal and the Supertaça, qualified for the Champions League qualifiers, and even reached the UEFA Cup quarter-finals. More recently, they had an impressive run in the Conference League, and unlike most clubs we've talked about so far, they still have room to grow. Their future looks brighter than most. But now we've reached the complicated part. The real question that's been lingering in your minds this whole time. Who is the real fourth giant of Portuguese football? Braga, Boavista, Belenenses? Truth is, any of them could be the right answer. Let's start with Braga. They've been the fourth strongest team in Portugal for the past 20 years. In that time, they've made it to the Champions League group stage 3 times, had multiple deep runs in the Europa League, including a trip to the final, and they've lifted 3 Portuguese Cups, 3 League Cups, and even a UEFA Intertoto Cup. They've never won the league, sure, but that trajectory still feels like it's adding up. But while Braga has been dominating the rest of the pack for 20 years, Boavista did the same for almost 30. After the fall of the Salazar regime, Boavista rose to the top by sheer will. At times, they were even the best team in the north, outperforming Porto. Over 3 decades, they've won 5 Taças de Portugal, 3 Supertaças, and delivered huge upsets in Europe against clubs like Inter, Atletico Madrid, Lazio, and Dortmund. They came this close to reaching a European final in 2003, but Erik Larsson had other plans. Boavista and Braga, at their best, were nightmares for the big 3, but neither of them got as close to being the best team in Portugal as Belenenses. Sure, they don't have the same European resume as Braga or Boavista, but that's because their golden era came between the 1920s and late 50s. For 4 decades, Belenenses were a dominant force, the people's club in Lisbon, and for a long time, they weren't the 4th biggest team. They were the 3rd and sometimes even the 2nd best team above Porto, which was still a regional power at the time. Their trophy cabinet is stacked with silverware that in its time was worth gold. 3 Campeonato de Portugal titles, 6 Lisbon championships, the Primeira Liga title in 1946, and 3 Portuguese Cups. For me, Belenenses is the 4th greatest club in Portuguese football, because among the 3, they're the ones who truly competed to be the best, not just the 4th best. They weren't looking up at the big 3, they were trying to replace them, and for nearly 40 years, they almost did. Still, I'd place Braga right behind them ahead of Boavista, because Braga has faced a much competitive era, and yet they've still managed to stand out consistently in Europe and domestically thanks to smart management and long-term planning. But I want to know what you think. Who is the real 4th giant of Portuguese football? Would you include another club in the conversation? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you think I didn't go too much in depth into the clubs I've mentioned, well, good news, because I've already covered almost all of them in full detail here on Throne FC. So, check those videos out, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.